Hi everybody, this is Jeff. Today we're going to be shooting 4K video with a Canon M50. We're going to use a Canon EF 22mm lens, and then we're also going to use a Viltrox adapter with a Canon 35mm EF lens. And every M50 user knows that there's issues with shooting 4K video with the M50, two of them. The first one being the 2.6 crop factor, magnification factor, just blows the image way up. And the second is the loss of dual pixel autofocus. It's replaced by the older technology contrast focus, which is slower and not as good. So what we'll do is we'll go through all of those, both of those, and see how to mitigate those, see what works, see what doesn't work in the video. So thanks for watching.
Okay, here's the M50 with a 22mm f2 STM lens attached. STM stands for stepping motor. STM lenses are great for video since they really don't make much noise or any noise at all when they focus. Also, as you can see, or if you're an M50 owner, they're very small cameras and they're easy to drop. I always use a small rig cage on mine, whether I'm shooting video, stills, or whatever. I put it on once and it's never come off. Here's the M50 with the 35mm non-STM lens attached to a Viltrox adapter attached to the M50. The Viltrox adapter allows you to attach Canon EF lenses to the M50. A couple really good side effects with this adapter is that it turns the M50 into almost a full frame camera, and it increases your stop by 1, so you get an extra stop of light. It more or less eliminates the crop factor, so this is very important when shooting 4K video. The 4K video crop factor is 2.6. As I said earlier, it just blows it up, and this takes it down. I have a video all about using the Viltrox adapter on the M50, so if you're interested, check that out above. So for this video I just shot in the backyard. It allowed me to set up a tripod wherever I wanted to and change lens configurations very easily. The tripod locations aren't perfectly repeatable, but I kept them as close as I can to prevent from getting yelled at for stepping on plants. So let's talk about the M50 crop factor. It's 1.6, so when you put a 22mm lens on it, an M lens, it's 22 times 1.6, which is approximately 35mm. So the Viltrox adapter is kind of like a big magnifying glass. It magnifies the light, gives you an extra stop of light, and also gives you almost near full frame. So a 35mm EF lens with the Viltrox adapter is very close to 35mm. So when we shoot in 4K, that's a 2.6 crop factor, so 22mm will then become approximately 57mm. And since the Viltrox adapter gets rid of a lot of that initial crop factor, we'll have the 35mm times about 1.6, which will give us around 56mm. So it's pretty close. I'm not 100% sure that these are exact numbers for the factors, but I believe they're pretty close. If anybody has any contention with this or any other idea, please leave it in the comments. And I also want to mention that I shot the video using neutral picture style. I took the strength almost all the way down, same with the contrast and the saturation, pretty much standard for trying to get as cinematic type images out of the M50 as you can. I usually use CineStyle as the picture style, but I'm not sure if everybody has that installed, and that could be the subject of another video. Okay, here we go with some images. This is a 22mm lens. There's no color grading at all for this clip, and the landmark parts of it are the flowers in the bottom right corner and the purple flower in the upper left. So here's the same shot with the 35mm lens with the Viltrox adapter. Looks pretty close, maybe a little bit bigger. The image is pretty clear, but to me it's just not as clear as with the 22mm. One of the issues with video on the M50 is shutter roll or jello. This to me seems to be much more prominent when shooting white, like these daisies. And it doesn't seem to be too terrible with the 22mm lens. I'm just panning this crudely with a fluid head mounted on top of a tripod. So here we are panning with the 35mm lens and the Viltrox adapter, and it's having a terrible time trying to find focus. And this being a non-STM lens, the lens is really grinding back and forth like a meat grinder trying to find focus. Very loud, as we'll see in an upcoming clip. Here I just set the camera down with the 22mm lens and let it find focus where it wanted to. It looked like behind the flower about that mid-ground leaf. Again, there's no color correction on these clips and it looks washed out, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Here's the 35mm 1.8, and as you can see, it focuses really well even with the contrast focusing if the camera is just sitting in a stationary position. Again, this is a 22mm, and as you can see, it's having a little tough time with the whites. Can pretty much take care of this during color correction. Okay, here's the whites with the 35mm lens with the Viltrox, and to me they look pretty reasonable. You can see the little droplets of water on the right and the left flowers, and it looks like the focus settled on the group of leaves in the bottom left corner. Okay, I'm just panning here and just to check shutter roll. It's not terrible, and waiting to see where it focuses. I mean, the contrast-based focus works pretty decently. It's nowhere near the dual pixel autofocus, but it's not bad. Okay, I really want you to listen to this. This is the noise that the 35mm lens with the Viltrox adapter is making, trying to find focus on the hanging baskets. The image goes in and out, and the noise is just unacceptable. I mean, it's good when it stops, but it's unacceptable for any type of panning. Here I'm just panning vertically and to see how quickly the contrast-based focusing will react. It's actually pretty good. Here's the same thing with the 35mm lens and the Viltrox adapter. It's a little wobbly, but not terrible. Here's a vertical pan again. I just wanted to see how the lenses reacted to the fire. Pretty clear with the 22mm lens. Here's the same vertical pan replicated with the Viltrox and 35mm lens. The fire looks good, but as you can see, the lens is still hunting for focus, and if I had the volume up for what was captured, it would sound like a meat grinder again. So here's what I concluded, that the Viltrox combo is pretty good, but it's not good for panning, especially with a non-STM lens. There's lots of noise and a lot of focus hunting. It's good though if you want to keep the camera in a stationary position for still type shots and video. Otherwise, I don't know. The big advantage to the Viltrox adapter is being able to use all your Canon EF lenses. Shooting in 4K with the M50 is okay, but it's not really the greatest. The contrast-based focusing is not bad when you use an M series lens, but it's very, very difficult, as you can see, when using a Viltrox adapter and an EF type lens. You know, at least it was for me. So following this are a set of clips that have been color corrected, all shot in 4K with a 22mm lens. And as always, this is Jeff, and thanks for watching.